Weilà raga, come state? Spero tutto bene. How's it going, everybody? In today's video, I'd like to talk a little bit about studying more than one language at the same time. Can it be done? The simple answer is yes, of course it can be done. I'm gonna share with you guys a little bit about my experience so far with studying French after having studied Italian and what happens when I get confused with the two. When I first started studying foreign languages, I first started studying Spanish because that was the language offered at my school. So I would study Spanish. I learned a little bit about conjugating verbs. As Spanish is a fellow Romance language, when I started learning Italian, having some prior knowledge of Spanish helped me. So for example, when I was first learning simple phrases like ti presento or le presento. Now ti presento is the informal way of saying I introduce to you. So like for example, ti presento il mio amico. I'm introducing to you or I present to you my friend. In Spanish they do a similar thing. I think it may also be te presento, something like that. But the point is, I remember that's one of the first things I learned with object pronouns. And so having already learned that in Spanish helped me when I was learning it in Italian. So there are many instances where knowing another related language can help you with the main one that you're studying. So having some knowledge of Spanish helped me with Italian. However, I would get really confused with Spanish numbers and Italian numbers because they are so similar. So I was learning from my grandparents how to count to 10 in Italian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and etc. And in school it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I would get confused because uno is uno, it's the same. Due and dos, they're very similar. So I would get really confused at that. So there were instances where I was confused, even with very basic things, and other things where having prior knowledge of a fellow Romance language helped me with Italian. So similarly, when I started learning French, I really used Italian to help me. But here's the difference. When I was learning Spanish and Italian, it was kind of learning both kind of at the same pace, you could say, because it was pretty elementary what I was learning with Spanish back in elementary school. Now, with French, what happened? I already mastered Italian before even attempting to learn French. So now I had so much more information that I could use to my advantage to learning French. And it really has proven to be helpful. I do it all the time. But now, what is the confusion with French and Italian? What happens when you already have mastered one language and now learn another one? So there are instances where I get confused, but it's not to the same degree as when it was Spanish and Italian. That was just straight up, I couldn't remember what something was, and I was counting, starting in Italian, finishing in Spanish, and vice versa. The thing with French is that it's all with little words. Yesterday I was actually teaching someone a little bit of French, and so I was pointing to objects around me. One of the objects I always have with me is my glasses. So for whatever reason, I couldn't remember the word for Italian because we were doing French and then we were going into Italian to show how the languages are similar and then how they're different. Because in many instances, if I say, for example, demain matin means domani mattina. Domani, demain, mattina, matin. The words are very, very similar when they're written. When you're speaking, maybe you won't be able to pick up on it at first. But the moment you read it, you're like, yeah, evidently that's what that means. So we were going through stuff like that. And so then I pointed to my glasses and I said, questi sono, I couldn't remember the word because just a few minutes before I said, ce sont des lunettes. So these are glasses, des lunettes. You could just say by itself, lunettes. I'm like, how do you say glasses in Italian? And so then my student actually reminded me and they said, it's occhiali. And I was like, yeah. Like, it's one of those moments where then you get confused. So I get confused in that way. And then when I was teaching another student, something really funny happened, which happens to me all the time. I was speaking in Italian, I was going to say what something meant. So I was going to say, allora, questa vuol dire. Instead of saying questa, I wanted to say sa, which is one of the equivalents of questo in French. So I was going to say, e sa vuol dire. So when you're speaking it, someone may not even pick up on the fact that you're mixing the languages unless they have knowledge of them, right? They may just be confused. Maybe they'll think, well, he's the teacher, so maybe he's just using an Italian word that I'm not aware of, right? Like, that's happened a couple times. The main idea is this. Yes, you can learn more than one language at the same time. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Technically speaking, I've done both kinds of things, where I've learned languages in a sequential order, meaning I started with Italian, pretty much completed it and then moved on to another language, I also moved on to a related language. So my prior knowledge of Italian has helped me tremendously with learning French, a fellow Romance language. When I was learning Spanish and Italian at the same time, I found myself, because they were so similar, I was getting confused on fundamental stuff, and I wasn't really that well able to ragionare, as I want to now say in Italian, to like reason between the two of them. If you find yourself wanting to use a word from another language as you're speaking another one, so me speaking English, I wanted to say ragionare, do it. You can do it, and then explain to someone what you meant, or use one of those expressions like, well, as we say in Italian, ragionare, and then the translation will come to you. Sometimes you need to actually make that mistake, if you even want to call it a mistake, but use that word from another language to carry you into the other one. So I think, yes, you can learn two languages at once. If they are not related languages, like they're from different language families, for example, you're learning Italian and then you're learning Chinese, I don't think you will have as much confusion learning those two languages at the same time. If you're learning two related languages, you may find yourself getting confused often. My recommendation, based on my experience, would be master one language, or at least get to a really good level in one of those related languages before moving on to the other. Because if anything, if you study Italian first like me and then learn French, Italian's gonna help you. Whereas if you're learning both at once, you could get confused, especially seeing as the grammar is very, very similar. And just like I said before, demain matin, domani mattina, the words look really similar. You may confuse mattina and matin. You know what I mean? So that is ultimately what I would say. So I would love to know what you guys think about learning more than one language at the same time, or getting confused with languages. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. That's all for today's video, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in and checking it out. Always remember to spread the love, and I'll catch you all next time. Ciao, ciao.